All right, it's about 3 minutes after the hour, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to our June edition of the PMI Western Idaho Chapter Lunch and Learn. I'm Brian Russell, your facilitator for our Lunch and Learns. So today we have Joe Pusz joining us. You may recall Joe was with us and presented a few months ago, so we have him back. A little bit about Joe. He is an internationally recognized leader in the project management and PMO community. He's a frequent keynote speaker, author, project management innovator, and was named the 2002 America's PMO Influencer of the Year by the PMO Global Alliance. Joe's also the founder and president of the PMO Squad, which is a Phoenix-based PMO and project management consulting firm serving clients across the United States. And then finally, Joe's also the co-founder of the Veteran Project Manager Mentor Alliance, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization assisting veterans seeking to transition into civilian project management careers. Today, Joe's going to be talking with us about the atomic project delivery, changing our habits for successful outcomes. So welcome, Joe. It's all yours now.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you everybody for taking time out of the middle of your day and braving the storms that I hear are rolling through. Going to be talking about atomic habits, right? The book Atomic Habits. Can we see that? How many of you have read, just pop into the chat, have read Atomic Habits or familiar with Atomic Habits and what's in there? On the list, not quite to it yet, okay. Years ago, yeah. Very good. Have it, never read it. Well, Amanda, we got to change that. Right after today, maybe we'll get you to read. As I'm going through this, right, just pop questions into the chat, or at the end, we can take you off mute. We can talk through those as well. All of the content in here really is going to be from the book Atomic Habits. I've added my spin to it, but really, the details, the content, I'm not the author, James Clear. So this is why I'm going to recommend, obviously, after the session, everybody go read it as well. But I think I can take some of this and put it into context of our project management world we live in. So over the next 45 minutes or so, the key here will be these 5 topics, right? Systems over goals, tiny changes, getting remarkable results from those, habits themselves and the different types of habits, 4 stages of a habit. I think becoming familiar with habits is going to be important. And then the 4 laws that James Clear has developed for behavioral change. As we go through all the slides, I'm going to use these 3 examples repeatedly throughout so we can get some consistent thought process. One will be habits related to some an everyday life example that I think all of us will be able to relate to. I'm going to give you a personal experience from my habits and the way I've evolved and changed after reading the book. And then obviously we're a PMI chapter here. We're talking project management. So a practical project management example for habits and how they can impact our job as project managers as we go through our daily job and our careers. So first up, there's this quote is really impactful for me in the book. James Clear has, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems." And oftentimes, I think every company in the world and every person in the world gets a performance review, and there's goals that we shoot for, right? We want to get maybe 100% projects on time, on budget, and within the quality demands that our clients have. Maybe it's a personal goal. I want to lose 20 pounds this year. And oftentimes we strive for these goals, but we don't automatically reach those goals, right? Even though we've set the goals, we have to find a way to be able to perform in a way to be able to get there. And that is the systems that we use to get there. And we're going to talk about those throughout the session as we get into more detail. But the mindset is, to get a goal, I need a system, not I have a goal and therefore I'll achieve it. And organizations and individuals get stuck on this concept of it's so important to set goals that we forget about what is the system that's in place to actually help me achieve that goal. And the more important of those tools is going to be the system. So we'll talk a little bit more as we get going, but this is a key concept that I think everybody has to be aware of, is what are we doing to set ourselves up for success? And if we don't have anything in place, we're actually setting ourselves up for failure. Key concept number 2, tiny changes, remarkable results. Key concept within the book is if I make a 1% improvement every day, at the end of the year, you end up 37 times better. It's not my math, it comes out of the book, right? If you take 1 and you make that 1% improvement, you give it a 365 up there, you end up at 37.78. And what they're trying to say here is if we think about losing weight, 20 pounds in the course of the year, well, if you get discouraged after a week because you've only lost a pound, you've actually made great progress towards that goal, but oftentimes we lose sight of that and think, oh my gosh, I have 19 pounds in front of me. But the small changes along the way keep adding up and get a compounding effect so that eventually you get this amazing performance by the end of the year. The counter to that is if you lose 1% on a daily basis, you get worse over time, that compounds. And ultimately you end up in a very negative space. So with habits and with change and with behaviors, we don't have to focus on trying to get this big giant change all at once. If you can get that, that's fantastic. But the mindset of Atomic Habits, the word atomic is actually in reference to small, right? Not in the big explosion like an atomic bomb, but in an atomic particle. It's a small habit change that we're shooting for. So as we go through and I share some of these concepts with you, and you're thinking about your own life and some of the changes that you can make, and as you examine the habits, don't think about the big change. Think about the small change consistently, repeatedly, and the compounding effect of that to ultimately get a big change. One example of this that gets brought up is if you get $1,000, that doesn't make you rich. But if every day they keep giving you $1,000 and you're just getting that day after day after day, on one of those days in the future, you go from I'm not rich to I'm rich. It was in one day that change took place, but you discount the 300, 400, 500 days that may have come before that. That consistency and repeatable of that change was required. Same mindset when it comes to our habits we want to be able to think through. So, what types of habits do we have? 3 layers involved in behavioral change. Outcomes on the outside, processes in the middle, and your identity in the inside. Kind of similar to Simon Sinek, for those who've read him and understand and follow his, what, how, and why concept, right, from his golden circle. And that's the same thing for habits. We can change habits that relate to outcomes. We can have habits that are related to the processes that we utilize within our daily lives, or we can have processes that attach to our identity. And we're going to look at each of these 3 different types of habits and how we can impact our own lives based on them, and which one I think is the best out of the 3 different types to utilize. So from an outcomes based, you still have all of these things, right? You still have your outcome, your process, and your identity, but where do you start? And on an outcome based habit, you start on the outside. What is the outcome you're trying to achieve? What habits do I then put in place? And then we follow in, well, what process do we follow? And then what identity do we develop because of that? So thinking back to the 3 examples I had mentioned, right? One's going to be common that we're all used to. One is going to be one that I went and experienced. And then the third will be related to projects. So an outcome-based habit that we're all probably overwhelmed by. We're owned in our lives by these little devices of ours. The phones have ruled us. So Something we can all relate to is I want to reduce my screen time. That's an outcome, right? Reduce my screen time. Personally, as I've gotten a little bit older, I have put on some weight. And for years and years and years, I've always said I want to lose weight. It's an outcome. I'm trying to lose 50 pounds that I'm focused on. And from a project manager perspective, right, an outcome that we may have is this next project I'm going to work on. I want to complete that project on time. It's the outcome that we're looking at, not the process and not my identity. And that's typically how we would look at that. This is usually where we set our goals, right, as individuals. I'm going to lose 20 pounds this year. That's a outcome based. It's a goal I have, and I'm going to now go try to achieve that goal. Same with screen time, reducing that. Maybe I want to reduce my screen time by 15% or 20%. And on projects, I want to get 100% of my projects on time this year. That's a great goal to have, but do we have the habits in place to be able to support that type of goal? Oftentimes, I think, as we all know, we don't have those in place. So what's the next type of habit? A process-based habit. On this one, we start in that middle layer. We then work our way towards the outcome. And then just as we did on the outcome base, we then go from outcome and we work our way back down into our identity. In this particular example, right, using our three different examples, a process where you have the goal of reducing your screen time. So I'm going to implement a process habit of I'm going to build a reminder on my phone at 2 o'clock every day that says, don't go on your phone until after dinner. And now you've saved yourself 3 or 4 hours worth of time off your phone. Or a process for losing weight. In order for me to lose weight, I can't just hope it. I can't just set that goal. Perhaps I'll put in place a process that says I'm going to start walking every day. And from a project management perspective, right, I want to have my projects finish on time. So what would be a process that I could implement that's going to help me build habits so that I can achieve that goal? I'm going to start a daily stand-up meeting every day. So if we think about the process-based habits, these are where most habits are built for all of us, right? We're intelligent enough that we have a goal, and we can't let that goal alone try to drive our outcome. So we then put in place processes to try to make sure those things occur. Very common, very typical for where we all are. But if you're like me, who's been trying to lose weight for years, you know this approach has its limitations as well. And therefore, it often may be the most typical and the most common way that we approach our habits, but it's also an ineffective way. So what's the most effective way of our three types? It's the identity, right? Starting with why, right? Starting in the middle. We want to know who we are, what process we'll follow, and then we achieve the outcome based on that. So an example of this, the identity I want to have is I want to be a great parent or partner, and I'm not doing that because I'm on my phone so much. So the identity I'm going to achieve, I'm going to attach myself to is, as a great parent, I will build habits that reduce the amount of time I'm on my phone. Because if I'm on my phone too much, I don't have as much time focused on my children. Or in my case, I said, listen, I'm not going to try to lose weight this year. What I'm going to do is I'm going to identify myself like the high school athlete I used to be. And as an athlete, I'm going to implement habits that athletes have, and we'll see what the outcome is. But I'm not trying to achieve 25, 50, 100 pounds, whatever the weight loss will be. I'm just going to behave like an athlete. And then from a project management perspective, we have this mindset of I'm going to finish all of my projects on time. Well, sometimes that's outside of our control, and sometimes it's not even necessary. But if I identify as I'm a rock star PM, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to behave and utilize the habits of a rock star project manager, then all of the things that come afterwards will fall in line. So the key goal for me is to identify who I am and behave that way, right? Identity habits are tied to our beliefs. There's an anecdote that's in the book that I think is pretty striking as well. Um, it talks about two gentlemen walk into a bar. And no, this isn't a joke that's going to follow, but I guess we could put it that way. And both of the people are trying to stop smoking. And when they walk in, a gentleman, a bartender says, "Hey, can I get you guys a smoke?" The first guy says, "No, thanks. I'm trying to quit." He's using an outcome based habit, right? He's thinking about the I'm quitting. And now he has all of the different cues in front of him about how am I going to behave because of that. The second gentleman says, "No, thanks. I identify as not a smoker." So he says, "No, thanks. I'm not a smoker." The different mindsets is both people are trying to quit smoking. They're trying to change their habits so that they don't smoke anymore. One's focused on the outcome, I'm trying to quit. The other is focused on their identity. I'm not a smoker. Smokers don't smoke. So I don't need you, the bartender, to give me a smoke. A different way to approach the same sort of habit that they're trying to work towards. And the one that's tied to your belief system, the identity based habits, typically has a stronger outcome and stronger benefit for you, right? Think about New Year's resolutions. We go in, we make our New Year's resolutions, and I think the stats are like 90% of those are failed by the second week of February, because we often focus on the outcome, right? I want to lose 20 pounds, right? Instead of saying, I'm an athlete. I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm just trying to be athletic. I'm trying to take the habits that we would have in place. So ultimately, we want to be working with identities that get us to the outcomes we want, but we start with identity first, establish the processes that would support that identity, and then we achieve outcomes because we have that identity, right? Very important to understand the difference between the different types of habits we have in our professional life, our personal life, and with our families that we interact with all the time, right? So, question for all of you. What is your identity? Right? Do you identify as a project manager? Do you identify as a rock star project manager? Do you identify as a person who has the role of project manager? What are the different identities that you have in your life today? And take the time to be able to identify and with yourself, right? Be completely honest with yourself as to what you're trying to accomplish, whether it be personally, whether it be professionally, and within the different roles that you have as a human on this earth, interacting with your circles of friends, professionals, family. And then what are the habits that coincide with that, right?
So Joe, on that note, and for this audience, so if a person were to say, I identify as a project manager and will act accordingly, is that kind of what you're saying, from a project manager perspective?
Yeah, absolutely, right. An example would be a expected role of a project manager, not just somebody who has the title of that, is that you are going to be able to meet with your executive sponsor on a recurring basis and not be intimidated by their role or status within the organization. But oftentimes, junior or new project managers don't interact with an executive because they get intimidated. They don't feel they're able to interact with them. But if you're a project manager, their expectation is you interact with sponsors, you go meet with them, you interact with them. So use your identity to build the habits to help you be the project manager. So absolutely, Brian. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. We can pause here for a second. Good time, because next we'll move into the 4 stages of habits. Any other questions related to habit types? Barbara, good point, right? You're not a corn eater, right? So for you, when somebody offers you corn, it's not avoiding the corn, you just don't eat it. So it's a way to approach that as an identity and not trying to fight it. Absolutely. A lot of these concepts within Atomic Habits, the book, and what we're talking about are kind of simple, but practicing and making it happen becomes really hard. So giving you these different examples hopefully will make sense for everybody, and you can personalize it and be able to absorb that as well. All right, so let's move on. Again, all of this is in the book. When you read the book, you're going to capture all this and it'll be a good summary. There's way more detail in the book. And obviously, James Clear is the expert on this. So I'm just giving you the introduction to get you to go further when you get into the book. So all habits, regardless of what kind, outcome-based, process-based, or identity-based, go through 4 stages, right? And they all go through 4 stages and they go in the same exact order. You start with the cue, which creates a craving. You then you have a behavioral response to that, and then you get a reward. Cue and craving are identified or connected as what I like, Michael, I'm a project leader and not a project manager. Great mindset, great way to identify who you are and the way you want to behave. I love that. So cue and craving are on the problem side of things, right? Something needs to change. We have stimulus in our environment. Our brain is always evaluating our environment and taking in these cues and identifying a problem of some kind, that there's some change that's necessary. And then our body goes into behavioral mode and we take an action. And that action becomes the response and the reward. So there's a problem that we want to overcome. There's a solution we put in place to overcome that problem. And collectively, our brain is nonstop from the moment we are awake. We are absorbing and looking at all of our cues. Then cravings come into play. And based on that is the response and reward, right? So we'll dig into each of those 4 stages now for the habits. Number 1, right, is the cue, right? It's a trigger to initiate a behavior. Think about our surroundings. Right now, we're sitting here, we're hopefully listening to me, hopefully we're not multitasking, perhaps you are, but guess what happens? Boom, your phone vibrates or buzzes. Immediately, you have a cue that hears or sees that, and you now have a craving that's going to kick in of, I have to go find out what that was, right? That is the way that all of these habits work for us. Number 2, right? For me, I'm trying to lose weight. I say I'm going to build a process where I go walking every day. So my cue is I put my sneakers by the door. And therefore, every time I walk by my door, I see my sneakers there, which creates a craving, which will follow, will come next. So I've intentionally built a cue that my brain is going to observe so that I can follow through on my identity of being an athlete. For the project management example, we may want to build pop-up reminders on our phone so that I know I've got a daily stand-up, and not only me, but my team members. Everybody's going to get a cue that says there's a daily meeting so that we can all get together and make sure we're working through our status, we're overcoming our risks and issues, we're making sure we're working together as a team. So we implement these cues for us to be able to understand where we're at in any given time, right? Our mind is always, there's nothing we can do about this. It's just the way our brains work, that we are constantly analyzing our internal and external environments to find out where these hints are, because what we want is we want that reward. Our brain is looking for an opportunity to reward itself. And the way it does that is when it sees a trigger, right? It sees the cue for us to be able to work in that direction. So Michael wants to be a project leader, right? He is going to be a leader. So that leader needs to have some sort of cues that are in place that are going to trigger a craving, so that that craving can then be identified as a problem. And how are we then going to have a response and a reward afterwards to be able to fulfill and provide the solution for that problem, right? So a craving example would be, right? The craving from your phone buzzing is you want to know what that message is. You can't stop yourself. You have to pick up the phone and find out, who was it? Was it my daughter? Was it my son? Was it my boss? Was it just something from Instagram? I have to pick up my phone to find out what that darn notification is. And that's the craving that happens after the cue happens, right? The cue hits, all of a sudden my brain has a craving that has to be satisfied. For me, the craving, I live in Phoenix, right? So it's super hot this time of year, of course. I see those sneakers. What do I think about? As an athlete, I love when I work up a great sweat. So to me, the sneakers instantly has my brain thinking about the sweat that I'm going to work out going on my daily walk. And from a project manager perspective, right, we've got that daily kickoff. The cue is our pop-up reminder. The pop-up hits, I see it, and boom, I start thinking about, I can't wait to get the status from my team. I can't wait to find out about that issue they were talking about yesterday. Did they overcome that, right? Those are the different pieces of habit that walk through. So cue and craving combined, they've let our brain identify what our problem is, and now we have to kick into response mode, right? And the way we do this also is your cues and my cravings and your cravings don't have to be the same for everybody, right? I'm not a gambler. If I go to a casino and I hear somebody winning a slot machine, it's not a cue for me to have a craving to then go play the slots. Doesn't impact me in any way. My brother, on the other hand, if we're at a casino, he hears that noise and he's instantly over there putting his quarters in, trying to win. Different people, different reactions, and different responses to cues and cravings. It's a matter of making sure that we find our own that work for us and the different type of identity that we've created. So on the response side, right? You now had the cue, it created a craving. How is your body going to respond to that? So from the phone example, I heard the buzz. I'm going to try everything possible to not pick up my phone right now. The craving is too much. I have to. The response, you pick up your phone and you look at it, right? Again, this isn't rocket science. This isn't crazy difficult to understand, but understanding what's happening and actually speaking it out loud and recognizing it and being aware that this is happening allows us to change and put in behaviors that help us overcome those. For me, right, I get the craving. See those sneakers? Can't wait to work up my sweat. I'm going to put on those sneakers and I'm going to go for a walk. Instantly, I have that response that I have to take over and get me on my way to becoming an athlete that I know I am. And then what's the response for our pop-up? We attend the meeting, right? You interact with your team, you find out what the status is, you start participating, and you have that response to what your cue and your craving were, right? The key on this is this comment here. That action that you take has to be in line with what you're willing to expend, right? If you don't have that balance in place, you're not going to do it. The response isn't going to be there. You have to have that cue craving that equals or exceeds what it requires for you to do it. And you have to be capable of it, right? If I'm an athlete and I have a craving that makes me want to play basketball and go dunk, well, guess what? I can't dunk a basketball. So if my response is to try to go dunk, I'm not going to get a reward that's going to line up, right? So I'm going to fail in that case. So there has to be an understanding and balance between the response and reward that you're going to get from the cues you have. So as we think about our different reward examples, right? The reward is you get the craving met. You read your message. You get your notification. You understand what's happening. For me, the reward, my endorphins are flowing when I'm out there on a walk, right? I'm feeling good about myself. I am an athlete and I am doing something athletic and I am flowing right now within my body. From a project manager perspective, you're getting all the current status you need. You're understanding where your risks are. You're understanding where your issues are. You're understanding how to be able to work collectively to achieve that outcome of trying to be a rock star project manager or a project leader, right? Like Michael has as his identity. The key is the reward has two components to it, right? The first, obviously, is satisfy that craving you have. And then the second is to teach you that when I get that, it's a good thing. And I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep coming back to it. So it's a satisfaction and then a reminder. It's a learning. And your brain wants to be able to receive these. And it knows that when I do receive these, I feel good about it. So the more I keep doing it, the more I feel good about it. So the more I keep walking, the more I keep attending my stand-ups, the more I keep reading my phones. Your brain is controlling our behaviors, and it's controlling it through the habits that we've implemented and the behaviors that we take place because of those. Knowing that as a person, we can do something with it, right? We have that capability to be able to respond to it, right? Keys to understand as we go through this, right? There's these 4 stages: cue, craving, response, reward, right? But if the behavior is insufficient in any of those stages, it won't become a habit. Here's 4 examples, right? If we eliminate a cue, if I remove my sneakers, I'm not going to get the cue to initiate a craving that I have to go on a walk. So it's not going to become a habit, right? If I reduce the craving, then I won't experience enough motivation to act, right? If we say every time I look at the phone, I'm not getting the craving anymore to be able to understand that I need to know what the notification is. If it's just irrelevant, oftentimes we get that playing the games on our phones and our iPads, right? You played that game long enough, now all of a sudden it's like, it doesn't mean anymore. I'm not craving that game as much as I used to, so I don't pick up my phone. If the behavior is too difficult, you won't be able to do it, right? That's the response. I'm going to go dunk a basketball. Well, if you can't do that, then you're not going to go change your behavior. You're not going to have a response of something that you can't do. And then if a reward fails to satisfy your desire, then you'll have no reason to do it again. That learning component. You did your response, you got your reward. I didn't learn like this was a reward big enough for me to keep doing, so I'm not going to come back to it. The first 3 steps eliminate the behavior, right? We can change our cues, our cravings, and our responses. We can work with that to impact the behavior itself. But if you don't add in the 4th one, it won't be repeatable. So you may get a one-time or an inconsistent or a random ad hoc behavior or habit that occurs. But if you want it repeatable, you've got to lock in that reward that's going to make it be teachable for your brain and make it happen over and over and over again. Another good stopping point. Questions related to the stages, right? So we talked about the types of habits, the stages our brain goes through, and we do with our habits of cue, craving, response, and reward. Next, we're going to jump into the 4 laws that James Clear has come up with habits. Any questions at this point? No, we will keep on rolling. All right. So the 4 laws. Another important part of the 4 laws is not all habits are good habits, right? We all have the opportunity to have good habits, but also bad habits, right? If you're doing something that you wish you could do, like me with losing weight, walking into the kitchen and eating the brownies when they're there, right? How do I break that bad habit of the cue? I smell brownies cooking. The craving, I can't wait to taste the brownies. The response, I walk into the kitchen. The reward, I taste the brownies, right? That's a good thing. No, it's not. It's a bad habit. I'm an athlete. Athletes shouldn't be eating brownies all the time. So what do we do to break the bad habit? The first law is either make it obvious if it's a good habit or make it invisible if it's a bad habit. How do I make sure that I can make the brownies be invisible? Right? I have to remove myself from the house, and then I don't have that smell. I don't get the visual or the aroma. I don't have that cue, and therefore I don't need to take action. Law number 2 for a good habit, make it attractive. Or for a bad habit, make it unattractive. And again, 3 and 4 you can read here, make it easy, make it difficult, satisfying or unsatisfying. All 4 of these laws come into play as we're thinking about the different habits we have within our daily routine. And we have to understand, is this habit a good habit or a bad habit? Sometimes we can think it's good or bad, right? Some people could think, well, stopping in the kitchen and eating a brownie, Joe, that's a good habit. I want to do that as much as I can because I enjoy that. Again, we all have different cues. We all have different cravings. Based on your identity, though, the identity you're trying to have, is it good or bad, right? For instance, if I'm trying to be a project leader, one of my cues may be I come in the morning, I read all of my emails, and when I read my email, I know that triggers me to say, now I can take 10 minutes to go on my phone and go surf the net. Okay, that's a habit we've developed. It's easy, it's obvious, it's attractive, but it's unsatisfying because I'm taking away from my identity of being a project leader. So we have to understand how the different laws work together. So we'll give an example of me, right? My outcome I was trying to do was I was trying to lose weight. The identity I've developed to be able to establish my habits rather than saying I'm going to lose weight, I've chosen an identity of I'm an athlete. Sneakers by the door, it's very obvious. Make it attractive to you, right? I feel good about myself. My clothes fit. I can actually see how I'm looking and feeling more like an athlete. I make it easy. My habit I said is I only have to go for a walk of 10 minutes. I'm not going to go walk for 3 miles. I'm not going to walk for 5 miles. I'm only going to walk for 10 minutes a day. And then is it satisfying? Of course it is when my wife or a friend or somebody I haven't seen in a while, wow, Joe, you're looking good. What have you done? Something's different about you, right? It hits all 4 laws within the habit universe as defined by James Clear. Therefore, my identity as an athlete, I can see it's working. I've put a system in place that allows me to be able to achieve it by making it obvious, making it attractive, making it easy, and then being able to get satisfied based on the outcomes of that. If we think from a project management perspective, right? This is the one we were talking about before. The outcome I was shooting for was I want to have on-time projects. But the better approach to that is I'm going to give myself an identity. I'm going to be a rock star project manager. And rock star project managers, we're going to have a daily stand-up. How can I make it obvious? It pops up on my phone. I've already put a habit in place that gives me a pop-up so I don't have to do anything about it. Very obvious. It's very attractive for me because I'm able to get the status updates every single day. I don't have to wait to the end of the week when I get a status update. I don't have to wait and try to walk down to somebody's desk or to give them a call or shoot them an email. I'm able to get that right there every day. It's easy. It's just 15 minutes a day. It's always at the beginning of my day. I don't have anything that interferes with it. It's very easy to get it on everybody's calendar. It's very easy for everybody to be able to attend. Even our remote people with Zoom and Teams and all the other tools we have, it's easy to be able to accomplish. And is it satisfying? Heck yeah, it's satisfying. My sponsor tells me the project's going well. Our project is green. We're able to get on time. My merit increase is going to be in place next year because I've been able to deliver my projects the way a rock star project manager would. So it has all of the elements: obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. Those 4 laws collectively work together to break our bad habits and reinforce and implement our good habits. Again, makes sense? I think so. Pretty straightforward stuff. But how do we, let's like some practical applications. How do I make all of this happen? Right? What is the process we want to put in place to start thinking now? I have an identity. What do I do next? Right? So the habit scorecard. This is going to be so easy to do, but it's going to be such a hard thing to do at the same time. Tomorrow, wake up and have with you a journal and a pen. And every time you do a habit, write it down. Wake up at 7 a.m. Write it down. What's the first thing you do after you wake up? Go make coffee. Write that down. After you drink your coffee, what do you do next thing? Oh, go for a walk. Write it down. Every moment throughout the day, write down your habits. You're just trying to create a log of all of the different habits you have during your day, right? Once you have that log of habits, then you're going to put either a plus or a minus next to that habit or an equal sign. Some habits are neutral. Waking up 7 o'clock every day. That may not be good. That may not be bad. That's just a neutral habit. So you want to say, is this a neutral habit, a positive habit, a good habit, or it's a negative habit, right? Now you have a log of all your habits. You've tracked that during the day. You know which ones are good. You know which ones are bad. But by doing good and bad, don't judge yourself because of that. This is just an awareness exercise. Don't beat yourself up if you've got 80% of your habits are bad ones. And don't also pat yourself on the back if 80% of them are good ones. This is just making sure you're aware of all the habits that you have in your life at any given time. And if you have an identity that you've given yourself to start with, you're going to use that as the evaluation criteria to say, is this good for the identity I've achieved? Back in December of last year, the identity I had was middle-class guy who's comfortable being overweight because it's almost a status symbol of I've made it and I don't have to put in the effort of a young athletic guy because I now have achieved wisdom. I've got gray hair in my beard. I'm bald and I'm overweight and I'm smoking my cigar and drinking a whiskey. That was my identity. So I would have given myself pluses on items that would have been today I identify as an athlete and now they're a negative. So it isn't a judgment of is it good or bad. It's an evaluation and an awareness attempt to understand where you are based on the identity that you have, right? So now, once you've identified those negatives, right, the minus signs on your chart, the work comes in to be able to say, how can I build a system to eliminate those bad habits? And for the positives, how can I ensure that I have systems in place to reinforce and support those good habits? I'll give an example that we're all probably familiar with related to project management. I guarantee, right, within your organization, as you have a portfolio of projects, a project gets approved, you need to get resources assigned. Oftentimes, the majority of organizations we work with at the PMO squad, there's a process for how to assign resources to the project. Typically, it requires the project manager using the PPM system to request the resource from the resource manager. But also what we find is the resource manager ignores that request. So even though there's a process, the resource manager refuses to do it for whatever reason, and the resource doesn't get assigned timely, and the project gets a late start. That's a bad habit within the project management process. We want to identify our organization as a project-based organization, and if we are, the habit should be remove where the resource manager gets the option to choose not to respond, and let's build a good habit where the resource manager does respond. That habit then leads to better performance on projects, and the reward is the company delivers projects better, is more profitable, expands market share, et cetera, whatever it may be. So these different habits may not even be your own. You may want to be able to interact and identify habits within your organization and the people that you interact with and work with on a recurring basis to ensure that we're all benefiting together. Another key about this, whether or not prior to today's discussion you ever thought about this, the habits are there. They're already there. Our brain is making it happen, whether we're thinking about it, whether we have awareness or not. We get cues, we have a craving, we create a response, and we get a reward. It happens today, it's going to happen tomorrow, and it's going to happen for the rest of your lives. Right now, the majority of you, if you're like me, those habits owned me. They were dictating how I was behaving. This is an opportunity to be able to go back and either reread Atomic Habits or read it for the first time and say, I have an identity. And what I'm going to use with that identity is I'm now going to build the habits that allow me to achieve the identity that I have. If the habits are going to be there anyway, you might as well own them as opposed to letting them own you. And this is where we see the people who fail on their New Year's resolutions year after year after year, is because they're being owned by their habits, right? They don't have the habits in place that attach to their identity, and they don't have the systems in place to allow that identity to come to the forefront. So, what actions can you take, right? These sessions are great if there is an action or a set of actions we can do afterwards. I've got 4 actions for you. Number 1, everybody, if you don't have Atomic Habits, go get it. Whether it's an audio book or a hard copy. I'm a hard copy guy because I like to take these little sticky notes and put them in there and underline things and be able to read through it. But read Atomic Habits. It's a simple book to read. We just talked about all the main concepts. It isn't rocket science. This is stuff that you can understand quickly. You'll be able to get through the book quickly, and you'll be able to make changes nearly immediately to be able to start changing behaviors in life, allowing you to take ownership of your habits instead of letting your habits own you. Number 2, define your identity. And you can have multiple identities, right? What's your work identity? Michael is a project management leader. He's not just a project manager. He's not a schedule keeper. He's a leader, and leaders behave differently than schedule keepers do. I love that mindset, right? I'm going to be a better parent. I'm going to be a better spouse. I'm going to be a better what, right? What is the identity that you need to have so that you're working with identity-based habits and not outcome-based habits? You don't lose 20 pounds because you built the goal, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. You lose 20 pounds because I'm an athlete, and athletes don't eat brownies, right? Mindset and behaviors work together. Action number 3, go build that habit scorecard. Talking about this today, fantastic, but you need action. And that first action after you know your identity, go log and record all of the habits that you have in your life. Are they neutral? Are they positive? Or are they negative? And after you know that, go build those systems, right? If it's a bad habit, put a system in place to eliminate it. If it's a good habit, put a system in place to reinforce it. We can control all of this stuff in our lives, or we can let all of this stuff control our lives. It's happening anyway. There's nothing we can do about it. As human beings with brains, we have habits. It's what we choose to do with those habits that impacts our outcomes. Do we identify and work our way towards that outcome, or do we let the habits happen to us, and the outcomes are created by the habits as opposed to us and us owning that? Lots of good stuff covered in a short amount of time. I hope this has been really, really helpful. I encourage all of you to connect with me. That'll take you to my LinkedIn and allow you to connect there. But open it up now. I see Brian rejoined. If you've got comments or questions, I think everybody can come off mute and fire away. But how can I help with any questions that you may have?
Hey, Joe, I'll start. So good stuff, and definitely going to get the book. So you had mentioned that identify, I think it was the second action, identify your identities. And you may have said this, but I missed it as I was making notes. You can have more than one identity?
Yeah. You may, for instance, my current identity to lose weight, the goal of losing weight is I'm an athlete. That doesn't help me be a better project manager. So me as a better project manager says, I'm going to be a rock star project manager, and I'm going to do the things that a rock star project manager does. So
sure. Okay.
You typically don't want to create multiple identities that are going to conflict with one another, right? I'm not going to be the couch potato and the athlete. Those two things are in conflict. But you can certainly build more than one identity to help you reinforce those different habits.
Okay. And then on the bad habits, systems to avoid or stop doing, what did you say in regards to bad habits?
Here's an example, right? In our family, I've got 2 in college, 2 in high school, and the 2 in high school, and my wife and I, every Friday and Saturday, we go out and we get dinner. So instead of cooking, we go. So our habit is Friday night, we're going out. Saturday night, we're going out. Well, the next habit was Saturday night, after going out to dinner, we would go to Jeremiah's to get ice cream. Well, Jeremiah's makes these giant soft served ice creams that I love, right? The bad habit, when I was the overweight couch potato, smoking cigars and drinking whiskeys, that was a good habit. I loved going to Jeremiah's. It was awesome. The athlete that I've identified as now, eating the ice cream afterwards is a bad habit. And going out to dinner isn't a bad habit. I can still get a nice chicken or a seafood or a salad, whatever it may be. Don't drink any sodas, don't have a beer, whatever it may be. So I can still go out and have a good habit there. Plus, it's the interaction with my family and my kids to stay connected to them. It's a great habit. But we don't need to go get ice cream at Jeremiah's after the Saturday night dinner anymore. What's the system we put in place? My wife now it's reinforced. First time, my wife would drive to the Saturday dinner as opposed to me. And the system was, my wife isn't an ice cream eater. She never really cared about going to Jeremiah's. So now it doesn't matter. The kids and I could beg and plead with her all she wants. The system prevented the habit from taking place.
She's not doing it.
She's not driving.
I love it. Yeah,
so
love it.
It isn't the goal. The goal was, I'm not going to Jeremiah's. If I'm driving that car, my brain is so powerful, it was going to force me to go to Jeremiah's. Put a system in place to avoid that from happening. Wife driving.
Excellent. Very good. I see Barbara made a comment as well. Thanks, Barbara.
Yeah, we all need big journals to write these things down, right? But remember, we're always trying to make small incremental changes, right? Tiny changes, remarkable results. I don't walk 10 minutes a day anymore, because you start walking 10 minutes a day, it's easy. 5 minutes out, 5 minutes back. But after you do that, like day 2, 3, 4, 5, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. Now I am walking 3 miles a day, 5 miles a day. But it started with 10 minutes. It was a small change to begin with that compounded and now is getting remarkable results. I'm down 35 pounds since January. I'm walking, and I've removed Jeremiah's, right? I've identified the habits that were good and the ones that were bad, and I've reinforced and I've removed. I've used the systems to be able to make that happen.
Very good. Any other questions, comments for Joe? And Joe, if you could share this presentation with me as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I get no kickbacks from Atomic Habits. There's no relationship between us and James Clear and all that, right? This is purely it's something that's been impactful for me in my career as well as my personal life. There's business examples in the book. Again, this is something that's very easily incorporated into personal lives, business lives, the intersection between the two of those as well.
All right. Thank you, Mindy, for your comment.
Thanks for that, Mindy.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe. And as a reminder to the chapter members, July, we take a hiatus for Lunch and Learn, so we won't have a session next month, but we'll be back ready to go for our August session. So with that, hope you all have a great summer. And Joe, we do appreciate you taking the time to prepare and then spend the hour with us today. It's been good stuff.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me once again. I appreciate it. And we'll talk again down the road sometime. If you're going to the PMI Global Summit is in Phoenix this year, PMO Squad will have a booth. Make sure you stop over. Would love to say hello to some of you in person if you're able to make it down for the Global Summit.
Okay. Yeah, that's I'm planning on being there, so good to know.
Yep, that's in November.
Yep. All right. Well, take care, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks.